Welcome to this edition of Business Redefined, and we are focusing on matters specifically in the retail sector, but of course traversing into other issues. And on board, I'm privileged to have the head of the Competition Authority of Kenya, Mr. Kariuki. Welcome on set.
Thank you, Julian, and it's always a pleasure to have me.
Many of us look at what we've experienced in the recent past with regard to the retail sector, whether it's Nakumatt, whether it's Uchumi, and now we're talking about Tuskys. And the key question we always have is, do we have a systemic problem in this sector? What are your thoughts?
Let me first appreciate the retail sector of the contribution it has done, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic, of ensuring that the consumers access and they get their supplies during these challenging times. And the retail sector has really acted as an important fulcrum to the supply chain in the industry. And therefore, it's quite an important distribution network for the essential services. And having said that, that is why the authority in April this year, through its own intelligence, acquired some intelligence reports that this retail sector could be having some challenges, and to the extent that they have delayed payments to their suppliers. Premised on the law, the Competition Act, and specifically the abuse of buyer provisions, the authority focused on 27 supermarkets, the big supermarkets. And out of the 27, we just realized it's only 4 supermarkets which had delayed payments to their suppliers. So out of 27, only 4 had delayed payments. And when we wrote to them, 3 of them came up with a payment plan. And we realized even some of the delayed payments were caused by balancing issues, balancing of the accounts. Out of these 4 is that we realized one supermarket had serious financial challenges, and it had delayed paying their suppliers. And Julian, out of the 27, it's only 1 we found that they are having some challenges, and therefore I wouldn't call that a systemic challenge or failure in the retail sector. Also looking at the other side of the coin, out of these 27, also we have seen so many others opening up branches. We have seen one called Carrefour. Yesterday they said they are going to expand to Mombasa, opening up three branches. We have seen Naivas. This week it has hit, I think it's the 66th branch. Yeah. We have seen Quickmart, and they all have different forms of attending to their clientele. So out of these statistics, I'll be shy to say that there is a systemic failure in the retail sector.
The question then becomes, given what you've said, do you feel that perhaps it is an early warning system that is failing to detect the kind of challenges we are seeing, the distress we see in entities like Nakumatt, Tuskys now, Uchumi back then? Or what is it that it normally unravels that we realize we're in a situation and now we have to try and salvage these outlets?
The challenge we have in this country, especially in the retail sector, because that is what we are focusing on, I would say it's the governance structures in terms of the way they are organized. Have we formalized the business, the retail supermarket businesses? Maybe I was running a grocery shop at the corner of an estate. I expanded to the town, and then from there I expanded to the retail sector. Do I have that capacity to run a big retail sector? So the governance structures is quite a fundamental issue, which I think we need to relook at. I know in some countries we have some universities which offer training in terms of how to organize the retail sector. There's an opportunity for supply institutions, that is the universities, to see whether they can offer such courses, taking into account the retail supermarket is really expanding in this in this country. The other issue is that why are supermarkets also going down? It's what I may call, out of what I may refer to as a positive irritant, in the sense that there's a lot of deep-end competition in this country. If you look at across the whole world, supermarkets, they make a profit of about 6%. Out of 100 shillings, 6 shillings, it's their own. In this country, it's only 3 shillings. And they usually have this challenge. Maybe they think they are 100 shillings. It's all their, their money. And then they use that to expand because of deep-end competition. Yeah. Now, the question you may ask me is that now how do we ensure that they don't take the whole 100 shillings? I've realized some suppliers have compelled some supermarkets now that when you have to introduce a system that when you sell my products, the one I have delivered to you, it has to reflect into my account. Yes. So that is a system which they can focus on. Yes. The other issue is that I've talked about competition within the supermarkets. Also, we have too much competition, which is what I'm calling a positive irritant. Too much competition among the suppliers. That today, Wangombe Karaoke has been supplying to supermarket B, and then he has not been paid. He stopped supplying. Then Julian Incorporation comes on board without doing the due diligence, yeah, and continues supplying. Okay. So it's both internal organizations. Number two, in terms of also, do suppliers do their own due diligence? And also, as the authority also, is that we have an obligation to do that inquiry and ensure that the suppliers are aware of the supermarkets which could be having challenges, and tell them supplier B, supplier beware. So it's what I may call a cocktail of issues to deal with this situation. But
Mr. Kariuki, just latching on to what you've said there in terms of suppliers doing their due diligence and being able to figure out who is in distress and who is not. Unfortunately, these outlets are not listed, so their books are not public. So if I'm a supplier, how do I get to know that so-and-so is in distress?
We have been working with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and we have been working with the Association of Kenya Suppliers, AKS. And for sure, they have shown that they usually know that some of them, they are delaying in payment. Let me not say that they are in distress. They are delaying in payments. And we have told them, come up with a code of practice between the supermarkets and your suppliers. And therefore, the first thing is for you people to agree on how your members should be paid. And if at all that code of practice is not attended to, then escalate the matter to CAK. We have told them we have written to all of them, and we have told them, can they give us an updated code of practice, which they are supposed to bring by the end of this month, and we are supposed to gazette it and ensure that it's formal. So that code of practice, because the government is not here to intrude a lot on personal contracts, but it's going to give a broad framework which can guide the supplier and the manufacturers and the supermarkets on how they relate. So the first thing is the code of practice. And I can see where you're heading, I'll be hesitant that we legislate for each and every emerging situation. We'll be having so many laws because issues are evolving. But we should have a broad kind of framework where the two people are dealing with, because it's a personal contract, to see that they attend to their problems before they escalate to the platform of the CAK. Okay.
Just before we take a break very quickly, talking about the code of practice, a few years ago when NACOMAT had its challenges, I remember covering a situation where the Ministry of Industry was involved, and we came up with this The debate was whether we should have regulation for the retail sector or not. But we said, no, no, no. The sector can self-regulate. The members can adhere to certain practices. We are now with Tuskys here. Did it fail, or what exactly transpired?
Nakumatt, I tell you, it was a lesson. And from there, I can tell you Parliament learned from Nakumatt. It amended the Competition Act and gave us the powers now, the powers we are implementing under this situation we are having now. You have mentioned about the code of practice which was developed then. And I can tell the public that code of practice, most of what was contained in that code of practice and the regulations which came from there is that they are the ones which informed the amendments which were done by Parliament at the starting of this calendar year, and those are the ones which are attending to the current situation. Number two is that code of practice which had been developed then is that it needed to be anchored in law, and that is why the Competition Act was amended to ensure that the Competition Act is requesting the suppliers and manufacturers to come up with a code of practice. And emanating from there, that is why I've told viewers that by the end of this month, we expect them that they have given us that revised code of practice, and we shall gazette it so that it can be formalized, so that it can govern their relationships.
All right.
Yeah.
Right, on that point by Mr. Kariuki takes us to a short break. We'll be right back, focusing now on the subject of buyer power. Stay tuned. Welcome back to this edition of Business Redefined, your weekly most comprehensive look at the world of business and economics. Tonight, we're speaking to the Competition Authority, matters retail and situation as we speak. And I'm privileged to have Mr. Kariuki. Welcome back on set.
Oh, thank you.
The Competition Authority demanded to look at the books of Tuskys. What were the revelations like? You even wanted to look at the sales forecast, for example. How was the situation looking like?
I think Tuskys has gone even to the press, and they have indicated they are not in a very comfortable situation. And that is what the books reflected. And out of this, we demanded that they come out very clearly in regard to the strategic decisions they are going to take to attend to this situation. And they have gone again to the press and indicated one of the strategic decisions they have taken. It's injecting 2 billion Kenya shillings from a consortium in Mauritius. So without me answering the question, themselves they have answered, and they have said they are not in a very comfortable situation, and they have gone to seek for outside injection of 2 billion Kenya shillings. That is the situation.
Do you want to tell us how much Tuskys has in outstanding payments?
Let me put it this way, is that as per August, they have presented documents that they have paid 5.4 billion Kenya shillings. And from what we have, which is a moving figure, because we are having many people coming on board and saying we are old, we are old.
They are still in business. So.
They are still in business. So it's a moving figure. That is about 60% of what they owe. But the best thing is that they have come up with a payment plan of all the debts they owe their suppliers.
Switching to the conversation around buyer power, I'd imagine if I'm a supplier, for example, and I'm looking at a retailer X who has a footprint across the country, definitely I'd want to be with that retailer.
Yes.
And that clearly creates that challenge whereby even if they're pending payments, then they have leverage over me, if I could call it that. Mm-hmm. How is the buyer power environment, especially from a regulatory standpoint, evolving?
I indicated that there were some amendments at the starting of this calendar year, January to be specific. These amendments were aware that supermarkets, they have a very big buyer power and they can abuse that buyer power. And to attend to this problem, the first thing is that it gives the Competition Authority some provisions that we can develop a model contract where the suppliers, all the suppliers and the buyers, the supermarkets and the other sectors of the economy, that they can be using to sign with their suppliers. So there's going to be a written contract clearly indicating the timelines for being paid. It's not in one thing I would like to tell the viewers that buyer power, it's not only in the supermarkets. Buyer power exists also in the insurance sector, and out of all the cases we have handled is that most are in the insurance sector, over 30%, 38%. Yeah. We are developing a model contract which we shall share with the suppliers and all the manufacturers and the retailers by January 31st, come 2021. So that at least the minimum content of the contract. Then number two is that we have been creating awareness across the whole country. We are doing our last 47th county in terms of creation of awareness, that when you are supplying, that you have to demand for 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. But also is that buyer power can be reduced. COVID-19 has taught us lessons. We should ride on it. Let's not forget what we have been doing. And also the government, I'm aware, it's coming up with a post-COVID recovery strategy, the National Treasury. And one of the things they are focusing on is developing the e-commerce. The e-commerce will help reduce the appetite for using the brick and mortar as a way of supplying.
When you're talking about an industry where it is low margins, high volumes that actually sustain you, then however much you might try to pivot the digital platforms, the fact is this: there'll be a few dominant players who are able to sway the heavy axe in terms of controlling the market. Don't you think this still leaves many vulnerable to abuse of this buyer power?
True, and it's a stage. We are in the first stages of exercising our powers. It goes even up to prosecution. And the law provides that we issue prudential requirements, which we have issued to one of the parties. And also the law provides that if at all those prudential requirements are not met, is that we can liaise with the office of the ODPP and those people are prosecuted. This is a case we didn't have during the other scenario, the Nakumats and the Uchumis. And when we implement all these stages of law, and then when we see that they are not effective and efficient enough, that is when we'll have the local standard to go to Parliament again and tell them that these laws you gave us, they have these challenges, is that we need to expand the scope of the law. So let me assure you that there are still some stages we have not implemented, and we might bring in some government agencies to help us implement as the law requires.
And earlier you spoke about the key challenge facing the retail chains is the question of governance. I know it might not be within the remit of the competition authority, but as far as de-risking this governance issue is concerned, do you have any thoughts as to what can be done?
It's being practiced. Let me give the example of Tuskys. Tuskys before, they didn't have a system where you deliver when it's bought, it reflects in your account. They have come and they have told us they entered into an agreement with suppliers that continuing right now is that when my good is sold, immediately it's reflecting in my account. This is what the code of practice we are saying that they develop should entail, that each and every supermarket should have that kind of a system, that it is two-sided, that you get your 3 shillings, if at all it's 3 shillings, and then you pay me my 97 shillings. So it's an issue of just a system. You develop a system. And that code of practice should create for that. And if at all you don't develop that system, is that there has to be a push, and the authority is here to guide on how it should be attended to.
All right. As we wrap up our conversation, One of the biggest worries out here is that we might potentially be in a situation where the retail sector in this country is dominated by foreign players. Do you share this concern?
I've had to. But a consumer should be worried in the sense that not who owns what I'm taking, but as a government, I'll be worried on what I'm consuming. I'll be consuming if at all the retail sector is selling only goods from outside, imported goods. But if at all the retail sector is managed by people from outside, but it's selling locally manufactured goods, personally, I'll be comfortable. Number two, I'll be more concerned on how the retail sector is governed, not who owns it. Because this phenomena ya watu wetu,
it's part of the problem.
It's part of the problem. It's what is watu wetu giving us. Personally, I'll be happy to see that whoever governs it, it's governed in a proper manner. However, I'll be happy if I see what is sold in those shelves is 95% Kenyan. I'm not advocating for total ban on imports, but I would advocate for government policies, and I'm happy the Big Four agenda is one of that, to ensure that we grow our own manufacturing sector so that we can be able, that a Kenyan can go to a supermarket and collect the Kenyan.
We are all aware that ShopRite is exiting the market. Are you worried as to the degree to which this leaves the competitive landscape, especially with the risk of dominance?
I'll always be concerned, but in this situation is that it's not a worrying situation yet. We have to ask ourselves how many, is there a lacuna in terms of the competition landscape? We have seen that after they have left some mall in Mombasa, another competitor is on board. Number two is that when also it left another mall in Karen, a different competitor is on board. So is that as one leaves, two are coming on in place. And that buttresses my point that there's no systemic failure of the retail sector in this country. But what I would like to urge is that we are aware that some of the rental and the leases, they were very prohibitive in terms of the rates. I'm made to understand some of the supermarkets in the town center, they were procuring rental space at 250 shillings per square foot. I think when the new entrants are coming, the supermarkets, they need to renegotiate with the landlords, take into account that the demand for brick and mortar is also going down. And if at all they get those spaces in increased prices, obviously that is how they are going to, let me use the term, oppress their suppliers and later delay payments. So there is a cocktail of challenges facing this industry.
Mr. Kariuki, thank you so much for your time.
Asante sana.
That takes us to the close of our conversation, focusing on the Competition Authority with regard to the retail sector, buyer power, and how it spreads across other industries. Up next to the Markets Report.